Welcome to the Epic Narrative, and now my dad, Bob Switzer. Here's Bob.
Well, good morning again. I know. I don't know when you're listening to this, but for me it's morning, and I just think it's great. I like mornings. Mornings it's just me. It's just me. I know. I mean, I've done the psychological studies. I know why. I know why I'm a morning person, and it goes back to my father. I know. It's just the way it is. Anyway, enough about me. On with the story. The beauty and the fun about doing an epic like this, and I'm sure as you are listening, if you've listened from the beginning, you're like 18 episodes in, and you're thinking, okay, like this is a really long story, Bob. Like a lot of you probably are listening, and you're thinking, I know the story of David. What is taking so long to get to the good stuff? What about the part where's the sex? It's coming. Don't worry. I purposely spend time doing doing some of those. Well, like last week or yesterday, whenever you're listening to it, the last episode, where he saves a city, but there's just a lot of time where he's just in the wilderness. There's day after day of the mundane survival, provision, connection to God, building relationships with men, and these sort of things build him up. They give strength to David as he moves forward with this crazy journey / plan of God. And as you know, I don't think that God's plan here was like an irrevocable, unchanging, predetermined pathway that there was no way for David to really ever choose not to do it. I believe that God's awareness and probabilities of choices allows God's sovereignty to oversee any possible choice that David could have made along the way. And in those choices, God's goodness would have still been there. God's desire would have still been there. And if David had made radical choices and got himself killed, I don't think the plan of God would have just exploded, and God would have been like, oh, great, my whole plan's screwed up. The Messiah will never come. Everybody's going to go to hell. God's too big for that. He's too big for that. He's too good for that. He's too loving for that. So when I tell these stories about the mundane and everyday life and months and years in caves and in crevices and wildernesses, it's because that's what it was. Like, this is an epic story, and it's put here for a reason. It's put here for us to know that there are everyday situations that we're in. There are opportunities to build relationship, and it's the small choices of every day that make the big choices easier, because there's a rhythm that you create. I remember often being encouraged as a child, like to build integrity in my life. What did that mean? It meant make the same choices you would make alone when nobody's watching as you would if everybody's watching. Now, I know that some of that motivation is behavioral based, right? It's the motive wasn't necessarily love. It wasn't hope. It was more, what the big word would be, the fear of man, right? What if everybody's watching you? Would you still do that? Would you still say that? And I know that in today's world, that's not as much as it's a big deal. It's not as much, because social media has so watered down people's behavior and opinion, and there's not as much intensity, because people can say, well, that was just that's what I was doing that day, or that's just who I was, in college. That's just who I was in high school. That's just who I was. I'm not that person now. And yet we know, based on life experience, that there are choices that you make every day that really do impact who you are. And David made those choices every day, and it impacts him. It impacts him on a day like today, on this particular episode, because this is one of those big moments. This is one of those stories that you probably have heard. Maybe not if you haven't been to church a lot, you might not have heard this story. But if you've been to church like I have, this story about David in the cave with Saul, that comes out. It comes out usually at camp is where the story would be told, because on a Sunday morning it's a little hard to set up. But generally, this would come out at camps and retreats, because this is a fun story. It's kind of exciting, and we're gonna roll in it. So this is chapter 24 of 1 Samuel. Saul returned from pursuing the Philistines. He won. Okay, when Saul left after the last episode, right? Saul gets word. He doesn't really know how close he is to David. He knows he's close enough that he doesn't want to give up, but he doesn't know he's literally probably within 100 yards of David. They're just on the other side of the ridge, and he gets called away because the Philistines are raiding. They're attacking. They're invading the country, and he takes off. And he probably picked up more troops. He probably picked up, I don't know, several thousand more, maybe 10,000 total. They go into battle. He gets done with battle. All right? Done with battle. Now, this is one of those time phrases. This probably is months later. Months. Saul comes off the victory. He's probably feeling pretty good. Probably sensing God's goodness in his life. He's like, this is good. I'm good. This is good. I won a great victory. The country should be happy with me, right? Those women should be changing the words of that song because David doesn't fight for us anymore. Like I'm the man. Things are good. And he finds out that there's been a David sighting. David is in the desert of En-Gedi. Now that's an area like down by the Dead Sea, and it again is deep ravines, tons of caves. There's lots of what the Bible also calls strongholds, just easy places to defend, easy places to hide. And David and his men are hanging out there. So I'm guessing that Saul would interpret this the victory over the Philistines and the fact that he gets back from victory and somebody's able to say, "Hey, David's down by the Dead Sea. He's like we've confirmed it. Like he's down there." He probably interprets this as God's favor, God's blessing on him to go kill David. Rather than, different perspective, but rather than an opportunity to repent, an opportunity to change his mind, to say, all right, God clearly is on my side. He's given me victory over the Philistines, and he's letting me know where David is so that I can reconcile something that I've done wrong. So I can correct what was an error. So I can restore a relationship that's been broken. Because that's the pattern of God. That's the pattern of the kingdom. Restoration and love. So Saul, it says that Saul took 3,000 able young men from all of Israel and set out to look for David and his men in the crags of the wild goats. That's such a great phrase, the crags of the wild goats. If that doesn't give you a good visual picture of where David was hiding out and hanging out and living at this time, I don't know what else would. The crags of the wild goats. Awesome. Now he takes 3,000 men from all over Israel, which means that he takes them all from the northern tribes that probably were the ones that compiled his victory team. And he might have even just asked for volunteers and just said, I'm going to go out on my own, on this mission. We're on a mission. I need 3,000 people to step forward. And they probably did, because they just come off of, like, they're excited. They're fully armed. They have all this plunder. They have victory. They've had the parade. They've visited a few of the cities. Their families are proud of them. Everybody's excited. Like, this speaks to the popularity and to the love that people had for Saul. Saul was not hated by the nation. And I know sometimes it's easy to present him like that because David's beloved. And it's true, David is. And David's victories were great, and David's leadership is so different than Saul. But that doesn't mean that everybody hates Saul. It just means that he's different than David. And it's Saul's interpretation of people's love for David that made David the enemy, right? He's the victim. Saul's a victim. When you find somebody who's a victim, they oh man, the struggle that they have to see anything in life as something that happens for them. They're always they just not okay, always such as a judgmental word. They often they have great difficulty viewing something that is anything as happening for them. They view everything as happening to them. You just did that again, Bob. You said everything, as though they never. I know never everything. I got to be careful of those words. I do, because it is judgmental. It paints a a very harsh line. I've worked with some that it seemed as though everything happened to them. And to give them a different perspective doesn't help. To walk in and say, well, you could learn this. Well, maybe you could do this. Here's a creative solution maybe for this problem. If you want to, you could move forward. If you want to, you could attempt this. If you want to, you might be able to do this or find this or go here. And victims will just say no, like you don't understand. You don't understand how bad this is. You don't understand my issue. You don't understand what I've been through. You don't understand how offended I am. They usually don't use the word offended. They just, how much it hurts. Like, it hurts so bad. Like, emotionally, I don't feel safe. I don't feel connected anymore. I need to find another place. I need to go somewhere. I need to quit. I need to find another church. I need to find another job. I need to find another spouse. I need to find another friend. I need to find another car. It just doesn't matter. It just literally doesn't matter to a victim. And it's not that they're evil people. It's just their perspective is so negative. It's bizarre. And then when something good does happen for them, they take that as God's blanket of approval, that the way they saw things was right. So Saul gets these 3,000 men, right? He's on a personal mission because he's personally been offended by David. And he came to the sheep pens along the way. These sheep pens would have been not necessarily carved into the rocks, but they would have been divots along the cliffs where it's easy to pen the sheep. Like, basically they just need to build about one wall or like a small horseshoe, or just cover a small opening, because the rocks kind of form the rest of the pen. So these goat pens are all over the place, and so he comes to that area where the crags of the wild goats, where they hang out, and Saul went into a cave there, and it says he went in to relieve himself. Now, I have preached this without research before, and that's my bad, right? I see the word relieve, and I'd heard somebody else say that he went in there to poop, and I thought that was hilarious, and I've preached this passage with him pooping in the cave. Now, it's just fun to say the word poop on the radio. It's just fun. Anyways, um, and the reason why I'd preach this is usually because I'm speaking to junior high and high school students, and it's just fun to say poop from the microphone. So, anyways, here he goes. He goes into the cave to relieve himself. That word in the Hebrew generally means to take a nap, Only one time does it mean poop. Only one time. It means to cover or to the covering like with a blanket. So it's probably more along the lines of he was tired, it was hot out, and everybody took a break, and Saul was probably, because he was king and they're in these crags, maybe some of his security guys were like, hey, you know what, Saul, why don't you let's get you out of the sun, let's get you some shade, everybody else can sit out here and get some drinks, but why don't we get you a little nicer place so we can protect you in case, who knows, like they know they're hunting David, they know that David has 600 men, they don't know how close they are to him. They probably know they're fairly close to them just because of the evidence in the nature and periodic information, general information that they're picking up from the shepherds of the goats and the tradesmen and all that kind of thing that would have been available to them. Not that there were tens of thousands of these people all over the place, but there was enough that they knew that they were really close to David. So I think that this was partially security and partially for comfort for Saul. And they said, let's go in. Now, why is Saul with all the men? Because Saul is personally offended, and he wants this to end. I also think he's with the men because he's trying to mimic what David does. David fights alongside his men, and I think Saul wants to be seen as David. Many times the people that we don't like are people that we wish we were also like. Now, I've never been to the extreme of Saul at this point, where I wanted to wipe out somebody, but there have been people in my past that I admired because of their style, I admired because of their delivery, and then they became really popular. And I think, wait, like we were peers, we went to school together, or like we were pretty much at the same level at one point, and now somehow you're popular, somehow you're at the conferences, you wrote a book, whatever, and internally it becomes an opportunity for me to start asking my questions, like when you see this person, Bob, what do you think? When you think about this person, what do you feel? Oh, you got all this, negativity, you got jealousy, you've got envy. Well, where's that coming from? Does that match up with heaven? Does that match up with the kingdom? Oh, it doesn't match up. Okay, so what do we need to do in order to change the way we feel about this person? Well, we need to change the way we think about this person. And so how can we do that? Well, we do that by refiltering who this person is, the way, from our perspective, we refilter it, we repent our perspective, and we bring it up to a higher perspective, which allows us to see this person the way God sees them, which then allows us to bless the person and call forth God's favor on the person so that they can even become more popular in the world. It's a good pattern to be in, but I just know periodically I do bump into it, and I think Saul at times, when he saw certain aspects of David, he tried to mimic it because he wanted to be like David. And I think if he had the opportunity and asked himself the deep questions and did the work necessary, he would say, actually, David's a better version of me than I am. Like he's the man, and I want to be just like him. But I struggle. But I'm sorry. I just went into a mini psychology course. Thank you so much, Bob. I appreciate that. On with the story. So he goes back in the cave. What he doesn't know is that David and his men are hiding in that cave. That's how close he was to David. That's how close he was to capturing David. Now, these caves are deep and wide, and they're connected all over the place, and they go on forever. So it's not like they were barely back there and Saul was coming up. But I have no doubt that they were in there. They knew Saul was in the area. They knew he was coming down that particular ravine. And they ran back into the cave, and they said, let's just wait here. So they're waiting there, but then they hear the troops stop. Now, I'm guessing if you've been in a cave, you know that there's a huge amount of sound echoings, and your ability to hear what's going on outside is muffled because if it doesn't come in the cave entranceway, correctly, then you don't hear it clearly. But when it does come in correctly, you hear it very clearly. And so here's Saul riding outside, and they probably hear all that, and then it stops, and they don't know what happened because it didn't fade out; it just stopped. And then maybe they hear some clanking, and the men know. I mean, they're warriors, and they've been at this for a while, and they're starting to realize that these guys are now, dismounting. They're setting something up outside, and they probably think they've been caught. I mean, I would think that. I would start to think, oh my gosh, they know we're in here. Like, how do you defend yourself when you're in a cave? And there's an intuitive nature within warriors to defend, to find the best way to defend and then the best way to attack. And so they're in the cave, and I'm sure it's dark, but internally they're mapping out where they're going to be. They're figuring out how they're going to set up like a kill zone, so that if the men come down the cave line, they can kill them, quickly and I don't know, win, send them running. And there's probably other people that have gone down the back of the cave to see how far back it goes, to see if it's connected somewhere else, see if there's another way out. But they have to do it quietly because they don't want anyone to know that they're in there. They're assuming that these guys are going to start searching the caves, which would make sense because clearly Saul knows they're in the area. So these guys are probably pretty tense right now. Their adrenaline is been pumped into their system. Their heart rate is up. Their eyes are wide. They're staring into the light at the end of the tunnel. Not that they're in the light, because if you've ever been in a cave, that's not that you see the light, but that doesn't mean it's everything's lit up. So they're looking, and they see a couple armed people. They see some guards or some shadows. They know that there's several people now out front. And then there's one that kind of makes like one shadow kind of up against the wall that clearly he's coming in by himself. And they probably heard some talking that went on because I'm sure Saul probably said to the guys, "Hey, I'm fine. Everything's good." And the men probably said, "Yes, Your Majesty." "Okay, King." And then David and his men hear that, and they know who's in the cave. And they sit there in the back of the cave. Now, this is where, I would get goofy with the description of, Saul pooping in the cave and the way that the sounds echo and he's got problems. He's pushing, grunting, all that kind of stuff. Maybe all that happened. I don't know. It could have happened. It's fun to think about. It makes me kind of, chuckle a little bit. So he could have went to the bathroom. He could have relieved himself and then laid down for a nap. Now, this is not unusual. Even today in the culture of the Middle East, it's not unusual for people in the middle of the day, in the heat of the day, to find a place to just sit. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the shade, but you'd sit in such a manner that your face is shaded, and you would just sit and just stay calm and keep yourself from overheating. And that's what all the men are doing, but Saul's in a cave where it's shady, maybe a little cooler, and he sets himself up to take a little nap. He covers himself. Now David and his men are in the back of the cave, and the men are talking to David. Now this takes some guts. You can't talk loud when you're in a cave, but you can whisper. And I mean, I don't think it was just one person. These are some of these 600 men are what will be called the 30 mighty men of David. These are men of not just great valor, but they're intense friends of David. These are men that literally have made promises to give their life for David, to do whatever they were told by David. These guys are committed. And now they're leaning in on David, and they're going, "David, this is the time. David, the Lord has given Saul into your hands. Remember? I love this. I love this. Like they were remembering, um, things that David had probably told them had been said about him, prophetic words, words of encouragement from Samuel and from other priests from the Lord. But the men said, remember the Lord spoke when he said to you, I will give your enemy into your hands for you to deal with as you wish. Now, this is interesting. So God tells David he had the freedom to choose. This is God. This is what love does. Now, I don't think God would ever choose to kill somebody. I just don't. But he does give his children the opportunity to make that choice. And whether or not it's you agree with me or not, that's fine. But I do think the choice of death is a choice that is on the table. It's not something you can't give freedom and then say, well, you're only free to make the right choice. If you make the wrong choice, I'm going to take your choice back, or I'm going to change things, or I'm going to keep you from doing the wrong thing. That's not freedom. That's control. That's what religion tries to do. That's what, and it shows up with pastors or elders or teachers or some form of authority that says, as long as you behave correctly, as long as you make the right choices, we will bless you, we will encourage you, we will exalt you, we will give you the microphone, we'll put you up front. But if you start making bad choices, we're going to take all that away, because you're not allowed to make bad choices and still, be in leadership and still have a role in which you are impacting the lives of others, because we only want to impact people in the positive way. We only want people to see us in the positive light. We don't want negative activity going on in our world. So God says to David, listen, your enemies are going to be available. You can do with them as you want. You have the freedom to choose. So David, takes the advice of the men. This is what's awesome, right? David takes the advice of the men. He's thinking, they're right. That God did say that. God said that, and this is a fabulous opportunity. Like, I could literally kill Saul in his sleep. And he probably figures all the men would just go home. Like he would be unopposed. Now, he might have a little bit of a fight, but he's got 600 men on his side. So this could really work in their favor. And they're actually in a pretty good offensive position. If they come out of the cave, they could draw people into the cave. Like this could be a really good deal. And he's thinking this as he's creeping up alongside Saul as Saul sleeps. This had to be like so intense, because you kick a rock, you slip, you clank your sword against a rock. There's a good chance the guards at the opening are going to hear it and come back to see how, quotes, they don't know you're back there, but they're going to say, "Hey, Saul, you okay? Your Majesty, do you need any help?" So David has to be so quiet. He is creeping up in the darkness toward the light, and then he sees Saul. He can see the figure of him laying there on the ground. I wonder about this robe. It's the royal robe. So he took it off. He took it off to probably he took it off to nap. I don't know I don't think he covered himself in it, because he probably didn't need a covering. It's not that cold. But I wonder if he laid it off to the side. Possibly he made it into a pillow. I don't know if he would as royalty, but maybe he did. Either way, it's somewhere. And I don't think he's wearing it, I guess is what I want to say. He had laid it aside in some manner. And David creeps up on Saul, and he sees him there. And I'm sure those words that his men reminded him of, the enemy, I will give your enemies into your hand, and you can do with them as you like. David has this moment to choose. And this is where I go back into that everyday life that David had. He chose day after day to be loving. He chose day after day to be kind. He chose day after day to bring hope. He chose day after day to be committed to God's plan for him to become king. Because I have little doubt that he was often reminded that there were plenty of opportunities for him to take on Saul, for him to, when he conquered conquered the Philistines and was living in that fortified city, that could have been an opportunity, a huge opportunity for David to start bringing in other people that were loyal to him, developing friendships and connections, to cause a civil war to begin. Not necessarily huge battles against his countrymen, but he could have started to divide the nation. There were plenty of times that David could have responded differently, right? Way back when Saul threw a spear at him, he could have defended himself and attacked back, but he didn't. So David's been trusting the pattern, the pattern. That's not the word you want, Bob. He's been trusting God to figure out a way to get him in the throne. He does not. He's made 1,000 choices not to pursue his own path to the throne. Now, would it have been evil or sinful if he had? No, the story would have been different. But that's the freedom and love of God, right? He could have chosen anything he wanted, but he didn't. He chose to follow God on this. He chose to let God be the shepherd, which is something he would have intuitively been so connected to. Like, I'm going to let you guide this path. I'm going to let you make the path. So he's made thousands of these choices in his life at this point. He's standing there, crawling up there on his knees next to, I don't know, he's close to Saul. He can see Saul sleeping there. He hears the voice of the Lord saying, I will give the enemies into your hands to deal with as you wish. And David says, I don't want to kill him. It's not your way. I just love this. I love that he had the freedom to kill Saul. And his connection to God was so real. David so much wanted to be like God and to pattern him on this earth that he said, I'm not going to do it. That's not your heart. That's not the way that you make the plans move forward. So I don't know if this was goofy. I don't know if he was thinking I can't have come all this way for nothing. Like I've got to do something. So he reaches out and he cuts a corner of the robe off, the royal robe. The thing that, the thing. That's awesome, Bob. The representation of royalty, the public acknowledgement that a king would wear that says, I'm the king. I have the authority to make the final decisions. And he cuts a corner off. And David sneaks all the way back to his men. And he's sitting there or crouched down next to a rock in kind of the shadows. And his men, maybe they have a small torch. I don't know. But they're sitting next to him. They're like, did you kill him? Like, they're ready to go into battle. Like, you just killed the king. Now we're going to go out after all the men. And David's like, no. No, look, I cut off a piece of his robe. And they're like, what? But he said, I actually feel really bad about this. Why would I do that? And it says, he uses the word master, the Lord's anointed, for he is the anointed of the Lord. He's like, why would I do this to somebody who oversees the country that I love and I live in? Why would I do this to somebody who God has put in authority. Like he recognized God's the one who chose this man. I've seen his heart. I know his love. I know when he's connected to heaven, he's a different person. Why would I take the opportunity for this person to, for Saul to get right with God away from him? Why would I embarrass him? Why would I humiliate him by cutting off a piece of his robe and it's in some physical sense assault the office of the king, assault the symbol of authority that God has put in him? Why would I do that? That's not me. That's not what I want to do. And the men were like ready to go, like they were ready to go. But David sharply rebuked his men and did not allow them to attack Saul. They wanted to kill him. They wanted to be done. They wanted to get out of the caves. They wanted to go back to their families. They saw an opportunity to end this whole crazy world that they were were living in and surviving in. And they were angry at Saul for doing this to them. They were angry at Saul for what had moved them into being a refugee to begin with. The whole reason for being with David probably came because of decisions that Saul had made. Maybe not personal ones against them, but governmental decisions that had ruined their business or ruined their life or ruined their town. And now they were refugees, and now they finally have worked their way with David to a position where they have the means by which they can make things right. And David wouldn't let him go. And Saul woke up. And everybody got quiet again. And Saul grabs his robe. He throws it on. He walks out of the cave. Everybody, rouses themselves off the the crags of the wild goats. They get themselves going. And they start to move along the crag. And so when he was a good distance away, David goes back outside of the cave. Now, all of his men are inside the cave. They're probably not like deep inside the cave. They're with David, but David steps out. He makes himself known. Yeah, I just pictured one of those, movie moments where he takes that deep breath. The desert breeze is blowing. He looks amazing, but he also, his eyes look disturbed, like he's sad. He's sad and slightly embarrassed by his behavior because of the choice he made. And he's literally going to apologize to the king for doing what he did. And king has no idea. He has no idea what he's done. Nobody's noticed that the corner's missing. Nobody pointed it out. Okay, maybe one guy noticed, because there's always one guy who notices all these kind of details, but he didn't mention it. So David goes out of the cave and he calls out to Saul. He's like, "Hey, my lord, the king." And Saul stops. I don't know if he was in the lead. I don't know if he was in the middle, but he calls out to the king. Now, what was that strange? No. When the king would be riding around, people would call out to the king. They'd say, "Your Majesty." They'd give him honor. Some would bow down. Some would, maybe they didn't pay attention to him because they didn't like him. But it wasn't like everybody, like I said, it's that they didn't all hate Saul. So yeah, it would have been strange, because Saul would have thought, "Wow, we were like, where's that coming from? Like I just woke up." So maybe he's expecting a shepherd, maybe he's expecting a merchant, but somebody yells out, "Hey, my lord and king." And when Saul looks behind him, this person is bowing down. His face is on the ground. And then the person starts to speak to him. "Saul, why do you listen when men say David is bent on harming you?" Now, this goes back to what we've talked about before. If you're going to have a conflict, confrontation, you want to do it with honor. You want to ask questions so you can gain understanding. You want to ask questions so that you can listen, not ask questions so that you can talk, not wait for someone to finish talking so that you can make your point. David's asking questions so that there can be understanding, so that there can be a relationship restored. He might not know what that relationship would look like, but he wants it to be restored to a better point than where it is currently. He says, "Why do you listen to men who say that David is out to harm you?" And I'm sure everyone's looking at Saul yeah, actually, that's a good question. Like, why are we? Why are we? And as Saul being a victim, basically having a victim mentality, a victim filter, he's going to look at this and hear that question, and he's going to answer it by saying, because David offended me, and I'm the king. David did things that hurt my feelings. He caused my daughter to fall in love with him. My own daughter, hid him and helped him escape. My own son, he's turned my family against me. He turned the nation against me. He turned the army against me. He went to my enemies to try and seek shelter. Oh, I mean, honestly, these are just the things I can think of coming, quickly off my head. Saul had a list. People who are constantly offended, who live in a culture of fear, who do not know who they are, don't know their own identity. They'll have a list of offenses to justify their behavior. Saul did not answer this question with, well, I don't know. Why do I listen to people who tell me David's out to harm me? Oh, I'm just an idiot, I guess. I hadn't even thought of that question before. Nope. Saul had answers to this question, and to him it justified everything. I listen to them because they're right. So David then presents a circumstance. He says, "Listen, this day I've seen you with my own eyes." Now's about the time that Saul's thinking, wait, what do you mean? "The Lord delivered you into my hands in the cave. Some urged me to kill you. I spared you. I said, I will not lay my hand on my Lord, on my king, because you are God's anointed. You're the Lord's anointed. God's given you the authority and the anointing to run this country. We are all your servants. We all are your subjects. I'm not going to kill you because you're not mine to kill. You see my father?" And he calls him father. Like, this comes from such a heart of humility. And David just wants him to know, listen, I love you. Like, we're family. I could have killed you. I don't need to kill you. I don't want to kill you. I don't know why you think I want to kill you. I've never tried to do anything to harm you. I'm not saying that you don't think I did something to harm you. I just know my heart. My heart was never to offend you. My heart was never to hurt you. My heart was never to separate from you. I always wanted to be with you. See my father. Why did he call him father? He called him father because, one, he is his father-in-law, but secondly, there was a heart connection when David first connected with Saul after Goliath. There was a family that David was brought into that David didn't have with his family. He had a father and a brother, multiple brothers, to be a part of. This was personal. This was loving. This was kind. David's trying to stir up this love once again. See my father, look at this piece of your robe in my hand. I cut off the corner of your robe, but I did not kill you. There is nothing in my hand to indicate that I am guilty of wrongdoing or rebellion. I have not wronged you, but you are hunting me down to take my life. You're trying to kill me. Let God judge between you and me. May God avenge the wrongs you've done to me, but my hand will not touch you. As the old saying goes, from evildoers come evil deeds, so my hand will not touch you. He's basically presenting his argument saying, listen, we're going to let God judge this. If I've done evil, then he'll kill me. Let's at least call a truce to what's going on. I get it if you want to if you don't want to be friends again. I get it if you don't want me in the throne room again. I get it if you don't want me to run the military again. But but can you at least take what happened today as evidence that I'm not out to kill you? I don't know why you think I am. I don't know why you listen to men who say that I am. I'm not. I could have. I clearly had an opportunity today. I didn't take it because I love you. I don't want to kill you. I just want to be left alone. And then again, remember, these are bullet points. I don't think this was a monologue. I think that there was time between these phrases. I think Saul was getting advice from those that were standing around him or riding the donkeys or horses around him. I think that there was a lot of conversation that went on because David was making some good points, and he had the robe, and Saul probably checked his robe. He's like, oh wow, and Saul's probably offended at the guards who let this happen, and the guards are probably in trouble, and he probably fired them on the spot, took them off their horses, took away their weapons and left them because of what happened. Like there's a lot of, remember, Saul's still a tyrant. Saul is still somebody who needs to be in control, and something got out of control. Something got out of his web of control, and he was not happy about it. So David reminds him again. He goes, against who is the king come out? The king of Israel. Like you have so many other things to do. I am just a dog. I'm just a flea. Like why are you coming after me like this? That the Lord judge between you and I. May he consider my cause and uphold it. May he vindicate me by delivering me from your hand. In other words, let God judge me. Don't you be the one who judges me. Let God judge me. Don't let my death be on your hands. There's a lot of love and humility in the way that David presents this, in the way that he words it. It's really intense. And when David had finished saying that, he says, well, David, is that really you, my son? And Saul started to cry. He started to cry not because he felt bad, not because he wanted to repent, but because he was embarrassed. His response was self-pity, not humility. He weeps aloud, right? He makes a big show of this. You are more righteous than I. You've treated me well, but I've treated you badly. I'm such a bad guy. I'm a horrible king. Nobody loves me. You're even more righteous than me, and I have a death warrant out on you. You have just told me now about the good you did to me. The Lord delivered you into my hands, and delivered me into your hands, but you didn't kill me. You're the good guy. I'm the bad guy. When a man finds his enemy, does he just let him get away unharmed? You don't think I'm your enemy. You don't even kill me when you have a chance. Well, may the Lord reward you for the way you treated me today. All the nuances of these phrases are self-pity. He's not looking to retaliate, right? But Saul was more sad than repentive. He's just like, oh, this is woe is me. I'm the victim. I'm the victim of your goodness. You've embarrassed me in front of everybody. You've made me look like the bad guy because the enemy, when you find your enemy, you kill him, and you didn't kill me, so now I'm the bad guy. In front of everybody. You've turned this into a show in which suddenly you're the hero again, and I'm the bad guy. I'm the horrible king. You're more righteous than I am. Oh, I know someday you're going to be king. And again, this is not a declaration of God's plan. This is his woe is me, right? My son loves you. My daughter loves you. The nation loves you. Someday you're going to be king. Someday. But swear to me that you will not kill off my descendants or wipe out my name or from my family. Why would he say that? In the culture of that day, the only reason, not the only, sorry. The main reason he would say this is because if David promises in front of all of these witnesses not to kill off Saul's descendants and his father's family, then there's a chance someone from his family will kill David when he's king, and Saul's reign will continue. This is another self-pity, self-preservation, pride, arrogance approach by Saul. He's saying, listen, David, you're awesome. Somehow you've made me look bad. You're the hero. You're righteous. You don't sin. You don't kill your enemy even when you see him. But I do. I'm the bad guy. You're the good guy. Fine. Someday you're going to be king. I'm not going to be king because everybody hates me. Everybody loves you. Everybody hates me. Everybody wants to fight for you. No one wants to fight for me. Just please don't kill my family. Don't kill my father, all my father's descendants when you take over, which is what every other king always does, right? They wipe out the family line. Why? Because if the family line is there, then somebody from the family may try to retake the throne. They will cause civil war. They will put together a mercenary army and come and take over the capital city. Saul knows this, so he makes David promise in front of everybody, don't wipe out my family, because in Saul's mind, somehow, some way, my name may continue on. My reign will take back over after David. Then Saul returned home, and David and his men went up into the stronghold. They didn't go home. I think because Saul sat there, David sat there and listened to Saul, and he thought, this is sad. I love this man. I really wish he wasn't like this, but this is sad. He is so concerned for himself. There's no way he's going to leave us alone. David took the oath. He said, Saul, I won't kill off your family. I won't murder your family. I won't wipe out your father's name. I will leave your family alone. Well, he had already made that promise to Jonathan. So this wasn't a huge jump for him. And maybe that's, maybe in Saul's mind, this was a good thing because David keeps his word. In Saul's mind, he can now start talking to people in his family about the fact that David made this promise. So listen, if David kills me or if I die and David becomes king, I want you, to take this. Saul probably started to put up supplies, weapons, food stores, hiding them around, making them known only to his family. Listen, if David becomes king, this is where I want you to do. Get together some men. Here's a storehouse of money. Get some mercenaries. My name will go on. This was all about self-preservation. And that's what happens when you continue to make the choices that lead you out of connection to heaven. Remember, beginning of this chapter, Saul could have seen the victory over the Philistines and as an opportunity to reconnect with the favor of God and the blessing of God, but he didn't. He took it as his personal abilities. He made this a pride issue. That was his choice. David had a choice. David could have made it his personal choice to move his path along toward the throne. He made a choice not to. He made a choice to trust God. These are choices we get every day. These are everyday choices that show up big occasionally. This is one of those big times. David chose humility and mercy and kindness. Saul chose self-preservation, self-pity, and arrogance. And they both went home. I hope you guys have a great day today. I look forward to continuing the story next time.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening. If you like what you heard, you can subscribe to this podcast on any platform you use. You can also reach out to Bob for questions or booking at thebobswitzer.com or email him at thebobswitzer@gmail.com. See you next week, guys.